everybody, and welcome to DC Fine Art. Today we are finishing up part 2 of the pastel pink flamingo. So we're going to be working just a little bit on the head just to kind of get some soft kind of detail in there. It's not really detail, it's just kind of soften it out, adding a little bit more of darker tones maybe underneath the chin and working around the head, just kind of transitioning those colors a little bit better. But the main focus of this video is going to be working on like the feathers. So this is going to be more of a softer type of tone. I didn't really want to go with, after we did the detail, the really detail for like the beak and the eye, I wanted to go ahead and do maybe more of a softer kind of look to it. So that way you're looking at its head and it's got all this detail, but then as it slowly curves around, it's going to start softening up. So these feathers, I want them kind of loose, I want them soft, and I want them kind of fluffy, just that little fluffy feathers kind of look. So that's what we're going to be working on in this video. For all you guys that are new to this, new to the channel, if you're not for sure on what this channel is all about or anything, usually I jump around, I do different mediums. So I work in soft pastel, color pencil, I do a little bit of watercolor. I know I'm doing a lot of uhs. My brain's going crazy here. Okay, and then I do some oil pastels, a little bit of acrylics. So I kind of jump around to different things. I even do some ink, like some marker stuff. And then towards the beginning of the month, like the first week to second week, usually I'll get a box from Paletteful Packs. I just started them. I got my first box for this month. And I did a Palettefull Pack box. It was my first time ever doing those. So towards the beginning of the month, I'm going to start doing like opening up a Palettefull Pack box or Palettefull Packs. It's hard for me to say. And I'll open up one of those boxes, kind of show what it is. I know that other channels are probably definitely racing to get theirs out there, but I'm just kind of doing it on my own behalf because I am super excited about them. And I'll go ahead and open them up, show what they are. I'll do a first review of the products that's in that box. And then I'll later, like maybe a day or two, it just depends. Definitely want to click that little bell notification. But I'll put out a second video and it'll be my final review of the products, just using the products in the Palettefull Packs. And it'll just basically be drawing just something random using them, like doing some sort of creative piece. And then kind of giving you my final review on it. See how they really are, because sometimes it's different than if you did a review on something and just did some swashes, but then whenever you go and use the product on something, it can be totally different. I mean, I had that happen to me where it's, you can't really tell. So Palettefull Packs, I do those within the first, hopefully the first week to 2 weeks, but it's within that Palettefull Pack month. And then I am going to be doing different mediums just once a week, just doing something random. So it's definitely changing up. It's not going to be the same thing all the time unless I'm doing a part 1, part 2, part 3, because it takes so long to do. A lot of the times it's my color pencil pieces. But anyways, enough of the chit chat. Let's go ahead and jump into the video. Alright, so I am starting out with my Diane Townsend Taranjas that I'd ordered. I'd ordered individual like pink, different shades of pink that I could use for my flamingo. And what I'm doing here is just kind of test sampling what it looks like, the color on my actual flamingo. I didn't bring any extra like sheets of scrap paper. I usually use the pastel mat and have some scrap pastel mat with me whenever I'm on my travels for work, but I just totally skipped my mind and didn't bring any. So it's all right though. I can just go ahead and make some little marks on my flamingo and I can kind of go from there because it's easy just to kind of wipe them or blend them out. And if they don't blend out all the way and you still got that purpley color, you can still go over the top of it. It should be no problem whatsoever. So here basically is what I'm doing. I used a little bit of the Diane Townsend Taranjas, but then I also used some of my other ones. I pulled out basically all the pastels that I had was, well, this one right here that I'm using right now is the Rembrandt. Then I had some Sennelier and the Jack Richardson's handmade pastels. I really do enjoy those too. But here I'm using the Rembrandt, and basically I'm making all these really weird, strange marks. I mean, I do not want to go into full detail with this, with his feathers. I basically, all I want is just kind of a texture. I don't want it to have that flat look that it looks right now. I want it to have that textury kind of look. So that way it kind of resembles like he's got something there, not just like flat like a board. So I am using this little bit harder of a pastel. It's Rembrandt, and I'm just making just random little marks, little squiggly marks, just something to just kind of give it some sort of texture. There's no real rhyme and reason except for that I try to go in the direction of where the feathers lay. So if it goes up and over, I'm going to make my little squiggly marks go up and over. If it kind of goes around the eye in a way, I will make my marks kind of resembling that same thing. So you definitely want to look at your reference photo and follow that, the direction of the fur or the feathers, and which direction they're going when doing this. Then I went ahead and did a little bit of highlight in there, kind of threw it in there. I know I got part of his head cut off, but on the top of it at least. But the main focus was just transitioning some of that light into the dark on that part. I didn't do a whole bunch with the top, like the tip top of his head, maybe a little bit, but not much. And here is where I found out for the first time my Diane Townsend Tarangas exploded. Yes, it did. See how it chipped the whole corner there off? It's made out of a pumice, and I had to wipe that off a little bit. But whenever you barely, I was just barely tapping and sliding, and it just went pop and popped a whole corner off. Now, see, there's a really sharp shard of it, and the rest of it is like dust, like powder. So it definitely makes a lot of mess, like more than usual. I mean, I've never had that happen to any of my other pastels, but none of my other pastels are made out of like a pumice. So yes, you have to beware. I try to take that little sliver and see if I could still use it, making little marks and details, but it started to crumble within my fingers really quickly. So I did it for a little bit, but then after that I was like, yeah, that ain't gonna work. So anyways, after doing some of those, I'll come back through and I started adding a little bit of highlight, kind of bringing it down into the bird, like his feathers, making some more marks with a darker tone. And like I said, we're just trying to create just a little bit of texture on this. I'm not going to spend too long with this because I really wanted to get into the feathers, like the actual feathery part of the flamingo. But yeah, just adding a little bit of highlight in there, in and around his eye. But the whole main focus of it is whenever you're doing this is to go from, you're starting out, you already have your base layer down. Your base layer is going to be your mid-tone. It's a mid-tone is basically where you can go darker or you could go lighter. So you don't want to go too dark, otherwise you can't go any darker and add more depth, and vice versa. If you were to go too light, you can always go darker, but you can't make it even more lighter than that light. So there's some of the bird that I got done, just making his little texture. But we're jumping into the feathers. That's the part that I really wanted to get into. Now this, like I said, is going to be a very, very kind of loose, soft look. I already did the hard look of having basically all the detail in his face. I wanted his feathers to just kind of be fluffy and just very, very soft. So I'm again with my Diane Townsend. I had a light, like a light pink, but it wasn't the lightest pink. So it's still a mid-tone is what I'm using right here. And I'm looking at my reference photo and I'm just kind of laying out the feathers in the direction of where I see them. Like if they're just kind of barely poking up or which angle or direction they're going in. And actually right now The paper was getting in my way, so I had to move the paper down on my pastel. But you just generally you want to go in the same direction that the feathers are going. And there I am trying to get that paper to scoot down a little bit. And I'll end up going a little bit faster once we start. I'll show you a couple of these little things. I guess they're feathers. I don't know why I said these things. Let's get these things. I don't know what they are. But yeah, so he had some feathers and they were kind of like, I mean, his feathers were kind of ruffled, but I think mine were a little bit more ruffled. I think because of how soft I made it looked really fluffy. But that was kind of what I was going for anyway. It was making it look like more softer and more fluffy. Now, whenever I put this down, you'll look at it and you'll think, okay, whenever I start putting some darker tones in there, or it's not really my darkest tone, but it is a darker tone. It's more of an orangey, peachy kind of, I don't even know what to call it, like a peachy pinky color. And it's really, really super bright. And it almost looks like it could be a darker tone, but I can still go darker than it. So while looking at my reference photo, I was just kind of following in the direction of where the feathers were going. I was adding in this mid-tone, which is not, whenever I start blending the other one, it's actually going to look really like a lighter tone, but it is a mid-tone. I remember whenever I first started using pastels and everybody was like, oh, use a, like a base layer has to be like a mid-tone. And then I heard other artists like squint your eyes and look at it. And whenever you squint your eyes and you see all that blur, that basically shows you your mid-tone. Like your mid-tones will come out and you just use those colors to block in the areas. And so I did that and it does work. Um, but the best way to describe it, to actually, for me to understand, and the best way I can describe it is just by picking a tone that's in the color range of what you're needing in your reference photo and picking out a tone that you can still go lighter or you can go darker. And that would be your mid-tone. So here I'm just adding in the direction of the where the feathers would be laying. And then here I'm coming back through. This is my Sennelier, and it is a like a peachy pinky color. It's very tropical looking, and I absolutely loved it. And I wanted to stick that in between my feathers. So that's what I'm doing right now, is just kind of sticking in that color in between, so that way it gives it depth. And then there was on the bottom, I wanted it to kind of fade out into like a little bit darker shade or a misty kind of color. So I used like a pinky, I don't know, has a little bit of like, I think it was a Diane Townsend on that one. And they usually range with some darks, like blacks, like it can go darker. They had a little pinch of black in it. But yeah, I guess I would call it more of a muddy look. But here I'm using my soft tool. And what I'm doing is blending it out, but I'm not blending out like in circles, blended it all together. No, all I'm doing is I'm blending out the dark portion, or boy, oh boy, getting tongue tied. I blend out the dark portions first. And after I blend those out, I'll go and wipe my little soft tool off on a brush or on a paper, and then I'll go back and then do my light colors and kind of blend those out, and I'll blend them out in the direction of where the feather would lay. So I'm looking at it and I'm kind of blending it out in the direction of where the feathers would be. So there's when I get done. That's what it looks like. It has those like two different colors, but you can see the direction of where the feathers are laying. So it kind of pops out at you whenever you do that blending with your soft tool. Now here I'm taking out my Rembrandt again, and it is still a pink, a very light pink. So it's still not a white. It does have like that pink color or some reddish tone in it. And here you can take that, and since it's a harder pastel, you can actually make more like little smaller detail, like wispy feathers just kind of coming out over the top. And I will end up doing this throughout the whole entire painting, just kind of making some little marks, kind of sharpening up some of those edges that I have there. Because when you're blending everything out like that and trying to get it, you still got a lot of cleaning up to do, I guess it should say. So this is basically me just going over, making the little marks of where the feathers are, and just trying to create some sort of, I guess, to where you can tell it's a feather or which direction it's going, just kind of a look of a feather. It was definitely hard because I'm used to, trying to do things in detail and taking my time with it. But this one here, I just really wanted these feathers to be softer. Now there I use my finger to blend. I do that quite often where I use my fingers. And yes, usually by the end of it, my hands are a complete mess. But still, it was fun. So here I am making some marks, just basically making the feathers in the direction of where the feathers were going. And it doesn't have to be perfect. It's just got to look like, get the resemblance of it is a feather. And there I'm taking that same color and I'm streaking it down in between so that way you can tell where the middle of the feather is on some of these. Just the ones that are like up close, because that's what I saw in my reference photo was a lot of the feathers up close. You can see the little middle part of the feather. And there I'm just kind of smoothing it off once with my finger. And then now I'm making some more feather marks, just some little wispies. Which it's definitely a process still. I mean, you still have to layer upon layer, and you just keep on doing this until it looks right. There is one thing though that I noticed whenever I was making this video, somehow my camera moved or did something. But you know how I made those little the centerpiece of the little feather there, the white like streak through the middle right there? I ended up going back with the orangey pinkish kind of tone. It's I don't know what to call it, but the Sennelier that I used on the very beginning, like whenever we were doing the blending out the feathers, and we had that mid tone, and then we had that peachy, orangey, tropical looking color with it. I ended up taking that color, and I basically made a streak underneath that white solid line in the center of the feather down below. So when I made those center of the feathers with that really light pink, I ended up going back with one of the darker peachy colors and made a streak right below it. So that way it gave it a shadow. And I'll end up having a close-up picture of that so you can see it toward the end. But yeah, here I'm just kind of making streaks, making little feather marks, little wispies, I should say. And I'll end up using some different colors too. I'll end up using like maybe some really like a purpley color, like a more peaky and pink, but yet purple as being like more toward the pink side though. I don't know how to describe my colors. It's horrible. But yeah, I started adding some random colors in my feathers so that way I had a mixture of some different colors in there. I basically was picking up everything and just kind of tossing it into there. There's some more of that pinky orangey color. I'm kind of putting some more of it back in to kind of divide it and break it up a little bit. And that's a wonderful thing about pastels is that when you're using them, you can end up, if you don't like something, you can always go back and just add more to it. If you covered it up, you can always make it a little darker, you can always make it a little lighter, you can change. It's just so easy as far as like being forgiving that you can just, fix it. And I guess that's one thing about learning. When you're learning for the first time, you don't want to make a mistake. You're like, oh my gosh, I made a mistake. I'm done. That's it. But when you start really learning how to fix a mistake once you make them, because we all make mistakes. I mean, I make mistakes. Everybody makes mistakes, but it's basically the key to it is just learning how to fix your mistakes. And when you learn how to fix your mistakes, or a mistake could be actually a good thing. You could make a mistake and be like, darn it. And then you look back at it and you're like, hey, I kind of like that. That actually looks really good. I'll just leave it. So, I mean, it it really does help out and makes it more enjoyable. Here is a purple. Now this here is my one of the darkest tones that I use on the paper. It's like a purple. I mean, none of my I don't have no names on these Rembrandts, but it is like a deeper purple, and I use that to create a shadow, like a deep dark shadow underneath those feathers to kind of give it even more depth, like kind of sink it in, like there's an even darker to where the sun doesn't really hit it too much. And I put that just randomly in between some of the feathers that I thought that would be like you can kind of see down and it's kind of dark in between. Trying to move that around. But who knows, my camera might end up moving on me. It slides out of the holder all the time. But here I'm just adding in some more of those purple tones, just darkening it up. Now I know whenever it came to the end of this, um, there was still some little bitty, and you can see my reference photo right there on my tablet. But there's still some areas, like little bitty areas, that maybe I'll have to go back over around the beak and stuff like that, that I might want to add a couple little, you know, little details in, but it won't be much, but just enough to where I guess you could call it just kind of cleaning up. And here I'm just adding in the darker purple. It's not really, really dark. It's probably not the darkest purple out there or anything like that, but it's one of Rembrandt's that I had in one of the sets that I really did like it. It was just like almost like a purple, but it almost looked like it had a little bit of a reddish tone in it. But I don't know. It was just a really pretty color. And so I was like, yes, I need this. I need this to add more depth to my picture. And so after I get done putting this purple in and creating more depth in between the feathers and areas, then I'll end up going back over with a lighter color. Here we go. Finally, I'm zooming through it. But I'll end up going back over with a lighter color and making and going over the top of that purple. So that way it's not like the purple stands out. You can see your marks. Usually if you make little wispies of the feathers and kind of go over the top of that dark, then it actually looks more, you know, two-dimensional, like it's more deeper in. So definitely you want to put your darks in first and then put your lights layering on top of it. Here I'm just kind of touching up, adding a little bit more of this purpley tone to it. It's like a purpley pink. It's very, very light. I mean, it's not really light and it's not the lightest color, but it does add a little bit more of a, like a purple tone to it, which is kind of cool. I liked it. And basically all you do is just kind of go back and forth with it, add a little bit more texture, add a little bit more, detail as far as this goes, but yet it still looks soft. It doesn't look all put together one individual feather. It just kind of blends together in a way. And that's what I was wanting, like more of a softer look. And there I'm kind of going over the top of my feather again, the center of it, and then I'll end up doing a darker tone underneath. But here's a picture of it. There you go. Well, actually, it's not the picture of it. I got it a little bit. I was having so much issues with my camera falling. But there you can see I added in some more of the lighter colors just to kind of show where the center of some feathers are. I'm kind of going over the top of the purple just by adding a couple little streaks, but I don't want to cover up all the purple that I put down. I definitely want that depth in there, that darker tone. It's just I wanted to make it a little bit, I guess, more realistic whenever you add the little wispies over the top. Kind of soften it out a little bit. And yeah, if any of you guys are new here, please click the like and subscribe. It helps me so much. And I make a video every Thursday, at least I try to. If I'm like, I could end up being a day late, which I will post that on my Facebook page, which is also listed below in the description. And let you guys know if I'm going to end up being a little late on the video. But I do all different types of mediums, like I said. And yeah, next week is going to be fun. I need to start getting that planned out. I have so many things that I'm already coming up with, but I definitely wanted to do something on different mediums and kind of like the layering. Do you go light from dark or dark to light with some different mediums? I'm thinking about doing maybe some color pencil. This is a soft pastel one, which is really nice to show because you kind of start out at mid-tone. And maybe do some oil pastel to just kind of show from light to dark, or even watercolor. So not for sure exactly which ones I'm going to pick out, but definitely wanted to do a video on that. So here I am, I'm just basically adding in those little wispies everywhere that I can find that needs a little bit more, I guess, structure to the feather, but I don't want to put too much detail into it. So this is just little wispies here and there, which I know I'll have to go back and just kind of touch up some of the edges around his beak area, but I will have to do that. I will end up doing that on my own time. The majority of this was just showing, how to layer from dark, or do a mid-tone and then put in your darks and then start layering on top with your lights. Here I am just doing some final little touch-ups, just kind of adding in some more blues. And if you add in the blue and start pushing it down into these feathers with like a pencil, this one here I am using is I do believe it's my Stebo Coverthello pencil. And I'm just kind of pushing some of that blue into the feathers so that way they kind of come over the top, kind of adding a little bit more, I guess, structure around the edges. All right. Final little touch-ups. And then I will be able to show you my pictures of what we ended up with. So there is the flamingo in whole. And there is some of his feathers. And then I'll do a close-up. I hope you all enjoyed this video, and I'll see you all next Thursday. Bye.